Hello and welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Scott Moon and Chuck Manley. Today, returning to the show, the author of the Accidental Traveler series, the Extreme Medical Service series, and then there's a whole bunch of. I think you co-wrote some books with your son, too. He was back on the show. Let's see, I think it was season 3 you were on the show originally. And so we're glad to have Jamie Davis back. Thank you for coming back on the show and welcome.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me back. It's always fun to chat about books and writing in general. it's what I do.
It's what we do, coincidentally, of course.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Corey Gillum was the first chat today in YouTube, so he gets the KSM golf clap of appreciation. Thank you, Corey. It's always Corey and Rick that are fighting for it, and this time Rick was a little slow, so haha. Corey wins it this time.
On the draw. You snooze, you lose.
That's right.
Got to get your priorities straight if you want to get up early and get the first.
That is true.
Comment in the chat.
You got to just be watching for the notification to come through. Let's see. What's up, Lou? Good morning. Richard Huffman, good morning. Who else is here? Tammy Blanco. I think that's Luke Blanco. Welcome. Anybody else in the live chat that are jumping in to watch the show, good morning. If you're listening on the live feed and you didn't know we had a live show, Monday mornings at 10 a.m.-ish. Central Time. If you're watching now, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed already, do that. It really helps the visibility for the show. And yeah, today's show is brought to you by Orphan Wars by Scott Moon and Jeff Chaney.
Yay.
That it was a surprise.
So exciting.
I'm going to drop the link a little bit later in the show, so we'll talk about that. And maybe I'll let Scott read the description.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you better prepare.
Dramatic reading.
I'm going to practice right now.
That's right. Let's talk about updates. Chuck, you were late to the program this morning.
I was not late. I was here when the show started.
Okay, that is true. That is true.
Granted, I slid in under the wire, but I got here. Oh, man, same shit, different week. Had some setbacks in my writing time with some stuff with my health stuff with the kids, but so I'm still working on Jack Dark Book 2, getting a little closer to the end of that one every day. Already got started on Jack Dark Book 3 for Athon. I've got a bit of an idea for a short story. I'm thinking about throwing at that Baen contest that I posted.
Adventure?
Yeah, if I can find the time to actually get it done before the deadline.
When's the deadline?
April, I think. April 15th, something like that. But anyway, that just, taking care of the family and trying to get my books done, man. That's been about it. Mm-hmm. Kids in theater, girls in softball.
All the things.
All the things.
April 30th is when the submissions are closed. April 30th.
April 30th.
11:59 Eastern.
So yeah, what about you, Scott?
Oh, go.
Oh, well, just trying to get the words to come a little slower this week, but we did launch Orphan Wars yesterday. So
congrats
about that. Been a long time coming. It's a very interesting process in that one because we had a lot more back and forth between myself and Jeff and a team of actually alpha readers. I've never used alpha readers before. And beta readers and editors.
You're sub 1,000 right now, by the way.
It's not too shabby. So we're going to see how that goes. I'm sure my massive list goes out today. It will definitely change things. That was sarcasm. I'm just sort of, it's not very huge.
The 15 readers at the moon base.
Yeah, exactly.
You say alpha readers, and I know what you mean, but for some reason, every time somebody uses that phrase, I just picture all these like really buff, aggressive guys. Just, this is an awesome book. You're gonna read this fucking book. Yelling
at me and telling me to do it different. Come on, Moon, try harder. Because what's that in Full Metal Jacket? I guess the Marine Corps doesn't get theirs.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, just doing that, hanging in there, doing work. Nothing super exciting at work, but lots of non-exciting kind of stress and drama. But that's part of being in any organization, and it's been very cold, so that's good. I'm sure a lot of people can sympathize with that. But
it's warming up though. I went outside without a jacket today.
Mm-hmm. I did to put out the trash that's been there for 2 weeks.
What do you guys consider warming up in Kansas?
Well, it was like 50s now.
Oh, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah, it was
here.
like
All
it's
right.
been going up like 10 degrees but normally in Kansas it'll go from like 0 to 40 and then 0 to 40 and then 0 to 40 like 3 times in 1 week. So we really don't know. It's more of an average.
It's like mid 40s here today is the high. So anyway, sorry, we're talking about the fucking weather. Go on, man.
Weather's the best.
That's what we do here, man. Jamie, what about you? What have you been up to this week, man?
I'm digging into finishing up the 9th book in my Extreme Medical Services series, which is called The Paramedic Sorceress. Funnily enough, this happens all the time, as you all know, but you write book 8 and they finish it in a day and a half and then instantly go, when's book 9 coming? So
it's a good sign though.
Like you really what are you doing with your time that book 9 is not done yet?
It's funny. It's a lot going on. So I'm still getting the words out, but it's been a slow drag the last week and a half or so. You hit those stretches where you just can't seem to get the words out as quickly as you did at the beginning. So, but we're getting towards the end now, and it's starting to flow a little faster.
Is some of that from like when you're doing editing? Do you find yourself getting bogged down if you have more edits or revision, or is it just kind of the natural ebb and flow of word generation?
It's the natural. I mean, I'm in the first draft stage. So what I do is I dictate, and then I dictate about 3,000 to 4,000 words, and then go right in and fix the dictation and do like a second pass all at the same time. And so it's that generation of the first draft of the story. I mean, I do outline lightly, but there's still, I always get stuck in the muddy middle a little bit, where I start thinking, well, this is crap. And, until I get to about the 3/4 mark. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not that bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you step back. I think we might be like kindred spirits or something. Let's talk about dictation. A lot of people always have questions about dictation and stuff. Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's funny you mentioned the people clamoring for the next book. I got a review on one of my books, and I can't remember whether it was Valor or I think it was Valor. But they gave me a 3-star. It said I would have rated it higher, but the series wasn't done yet. Like, what?
It's like somebody watching The Mandalorian for the first time.
Yeah, it was weird. I've had a pretty slow week too. Most of my words were in planning and outlining. I finished the outline for Gods of Fire, and as I finished it, I went back and I had this kind of epiphany of what if I did this? And of course that thing changed a lot of things that were already happening in the book, and so I had to go back and redo that. Some of the time was spent like thinking, okay, if I did that, then how does it change the world itself? Because it's a military fantasy and it's on a different world. And I probably spent about 2 days just thinking about that and making notes. So my word counts were kind of low. If you check the Keystroke Rimo, there was a couple days where I didn't get over 600 words, but that's because I was handwriting a lot of notes and trying to figure some stuff out. And I think it went really well. I actually, yesterday morning, I wrote 3 pages worth of notes and basically got the entire second book planned out on paper. And so I count that as a win, even though nothing happened in the word spot.
It all goes in the tank. That's why I count time and words, because sometimes you start beating yourself about your word count and you realize, but I actually did a lot of good work. I try to monitor them both. I've
been doing these update videos that I send out to my newsletter first, and then they're on YouTube. And this last one I did some tricky editing that I thought was pretty funny, and it makes it seem like it's a YouTube video, even though it's not just me talking to the camera. It's really super boring. It's a content creator video, because I watch a lot of YouTube videos at work and stuff, and it's like Josh actually knows what he's doing. Holy shit! I'm gonna immediately quit doing YouTube videos. I can't compare. Yeah, no, it was fun doing it. It took me a little while to figure out the rhythm of doing everything, and so I think the next one should be faster. But it was fun to do. So. Let's see. Silent Wolf is in the chat. Hello. And yes, 50s is Parker weather in California. Here, though, 50s is pretty average for the springtime. And it varies, because I'll wear 2 coats and my kids will wear none.
and then my wife will yell at them for not wearing coats.
This is the type of weather where you have the dudes that are wearing shorts and hoodies.
Yeah. Shorts and a Carhartt jacket and like work boots.
And we don't even like want to talk to Rick. He's in the 70s in Florida. I'm gonna laugh when you finally move. He's planning on moving to Wyoming. When he finally moves to Wyoming and he gets like sub 30 temperatures half the time of the year, then
it's 30, but the wind chill's negative 78.
Dude, I lived in Cheyenne for 6 years, and it was right at the foothills of the Rockies. And in the summertime, or any day really, you look outside and you're like, oh, it's a nice sunshiny day outside. It's going to be super cool. And then you open up the window or you open the door and you walk out, and the wind's blowing at 50 miles an hour, and it's coming off the Rockies, and it's just like chilly wind. It's stupid.
Yep.
So let's talk about your books, Jamie. The 8th book in your extreme medical series. Now, when you came back on, I think you had just started this series. You were like book 1 or 2 or 3 into it, and you were still kind of neck deep in the Accidental Traveler series. You're also doing the co-writing stuff with your son. So talk about this the paranormal, because it's paranormal urban romance, but it's also most of the books are all medical related, like EMS kind of.
Right. Now, this is actually my first series that I wrote. So I started this. The first book came out in 2015. So this is actually my oldest series. And it's straight urban fantasy. There's a little romance in there because my wife's my alpha reader, and she beat me over the head and said, you got to have somebody that your main character has an interest in. So I had to go back and rewrite book 1 and add a romantic interest, but it's not heavy romance. I wouldn't call it paranormal romance at all. But it does have a medical twist. And it came about actually from, a long night on the ambulance, because I used to ride, overnights on my ambulance days back when I was a paramedic. And, I had this guy who was a pretty much frequent flyer, frequent traveler with us. He was very, very hairy, vagrant, had a lot of health issues, but my partner and I made a joke about maybe he was a werewolf, and and instantly my brain went, well, what if there were paramedics who did nothing but treat the supernatural creatures that secretly live among us, right? And that was the birth of that story, and it took about 5 years before I actually wrote it down, but that was, it was always rattling around the back of my head. And for a long time after that, I would look at a patient and go, wonder what kind of creature they are.
Yeah. What is your diagnosis?
It gives another twist on like you driving around, and like we call it wargaming in law enforcement. You're just thinking about different things. But I do that now as a writer. Yeah. You drive around and you're like, what if that was a gateway to another world or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love sitting in like coffee shops and stuff and looking at groups of people and going, well, they're plotting to murder their husbands.
Probably true.
They're going to knock over the bank next door.
That's right.
Maybe they can link up and make these some sort of like synergy.
So you're writing the 9th book now. The 8th book just came out in December.
Yep.
And it's an ongoing series. Is same characters or different characters in every book?
There's the same main character. Dean Flynn is the paramedic who the series starts with him just out of the academy, and unbeknownst to him, he gets assigned to this Station U, which is where they treat all the unusual patients. And he never, he didn't realize that his patient was going to turn into a werewolf until he started trying to treat the guy's diabetes, and he his mental status got a little altered and he shifted. So, imagine your surprise if suddenly, this ordinary accountant turns into a werewolf right in front of you. So that was his first day on the job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of a first day.
Yeah.
I could see like doing first days where you're like, oh, you got to treat a gunshot victim, and you're like, oh crap, this is really hairy. But having somebody turn into a werewolf, that would, man.
Yeah, good times. Tammy has a question, Josh.
Yeah, I saw the one up there. I can't imagine how difficult it is doing a big series and trying to remember all the characters in different directions. How do you keep it straight? Do you use sticky notes?
I actually, so I write using a program called Scrivener, which the authors out there probably know. So I always have a file in my reference area that is for any series, and it's an ongoing. Whenever I create a new character, even somebody they meet in passing, I jump over there and put in the chapter and who they are briefly. It takes me 30 seconds, but and then if I ever go into that coffee shop again and need a waitress, like I already met the waitress, so of course the same waitress happens to be working again. I go over to my story Bible, go down to where the book, until I find her. It's just a series of characters, situations, artifacts, whatever, and I just keep that with me when I write the series and drag it into the next book when I start another book project. So
I'm curious about how you work through that process. Like I use Scrivener as well, and what I did with my most recent project is I had basically all the plot worked out ahead of character, and then went back in and did character. Like I took a day and just kind of lined all that out. But then as I go through the book and I think of different things to add to each character, I'll go back and add that in. I know some people like to world build at the front end. So how do you typically, when you go through and you're writing your projects, do you world build first and then plot, or how does that work for you?
I do a little bit of both. So like Paramedics Amazon, the main character, well, not the main character, but the main side character in that, which is the Amazon herself, is based. I did some research and found that there had been in the late 1800s a regiment of female warriors in West Africa, and they were called the Dahomey Amazons, and they were feared greatly by the other troops they came in contact with. So I said, well, they were eventually disbanded by colonial forces, and but I was like, what if they weren't? So I created Dahomey Amazon in modern times, who was an Interpol agent, and when my paramedic character uncovers an international trafficking ring, she shows up to help him figure out where all the lost people are. And he takes care of the medical care, and she helps out with all the bad guys. So it kind of worked out. So I do some of that world building up front, but then as I'm writing, a lot of world building happens. And so at the end, I try at the end of every chapter, go back and make sure I've caught all the side characters or all the locations or whatever that I need to add to my city that weren't previously there. Although at book 8 and 9 now, the world's pretty fleshed out,
right?
Because it's all about a paramedic riding around the city, doing his job. So the city is there, and people, that have read the series recognize, they have back at their station, they have a zombie chef who, cooks all their food for them, and he's
questionable choice of chef.
And so they do a hand check every time he brings food out to make sure all his digits are there, so they don't accidentally find a finger in their hamburger. So,
nice.
But that's a lot of fun, because I actually get to drop recipes on my readers through the newsletter and stuff. Freddie's recipes, and so I Maryland crab soup, or and Thanksgiving and Christmas time, I put out pumpkin muffin recipe and, stuff that he actually makes them in the books. So
I think you could have a definite cooking show with the zombie chef. It would probably be a winner all the way.
Well, that's amazing, because a lot of people talk about how do you market your books, or how do you put yourself out there without going buy my book, or every newsletter is different. And it's interesting that you have that twist on the content, that you can tag it back to your books, but it's, here's a good recipe that I tried out, put it in the book or whatever. And it's not buy my book, it's look at this recipe. And that's interesting.
Yeah. It's really been well received. I try to do it every month. I probably more likely do it about every 6 to 8 weeks. But it's something that I enjoy doing. And I do most of the cooking in my house, so it's usually something that I've created or come up with, or a variation on a recipe I've tried, and it's a lot of fun to then put that recipe in the book. And the paramedics come back, the shift change is going on, the new shift arrives a little early so they can eat. The leaving shift stays around so they can eat, and it's kind of a nice time for everybody to kind of shoot the breeze. And and nice transition for the story. So.
You mentioned that you do a little bit of outlining ahead of time, and then you just sit down and write the book. So how does that process work? I mean, it's almost like you're kind of a hybrid pantser outliner where you just have broad strokes, and then. So can you go through a little bit of that process?
Yeah. So I start out a book usually with a premise, usually maybe a sentence or two of this is what the story's about. So like Amazon started out as what if Dean discovered a trafficking ring and needed this help from this Interpol agent? It was kind of where I started.
Yeah.
And then I break that into 3 paragraphs that describe the 3 acts that I'm going to be writing about. And then I break each act up into chapters. I write about 60 to 70,000 words. So it usually ends up being around 30 chapters long. And so I then flesh out the chapters in each act as I go through. And I end up with roughly about a sentence or 2, sometimes a little bit more for each chapter. Then I get towards the end, and because I'm a pantser at heart, the last 10 chapters, sometimes there's a big fight scene and that's it.
Right.
Or amazing rescue. So I kind of have a glimmer in my mind's eye of what I think I want to have happen there. But usually by the time I get there in the story, I've got a flow of what's going to happen. And it becomes fleshed out by the chapters before it.
It kind of becomes inevitable, but surprising is kind of what you're always going for. I like to write outlines and then get deep into it and go look at my outlines. So, yeah, I didn't do any of that. But
yeah, I'm always adding chapters or adding scenes in that weren't there in the original draft. But that's the joy of it for me, is that the characters and the story dictate what happens. Really, I start it, but I don't end it. That's for sure.
And with him being an ambulance paramedic, I assume that you're going to have some type of procedural emergency services medicine in the book. And I know one of the things that Scott and I do is or get asked a lot is what would police do in this particular instance? And a lot of times it's that stuff is not interesting for a book. It's just very boring and like a detective waiting like a month for DNA results or whatever. It just doesn't work. So how do you manage the
Well, and that's the biggest complaint. That's the biggest negative review I get, is that book 1 has got too much medical detail in it.
Yeah.
And I went, once I got a bunch of those, I went back and actually re-edited it. Like probably when I was done book 3, I went back to book 1 and pulled a lot of the medical terminology out. And so now the medicine is accurate, but it's much more abbreviated. Started an IV, that kind of thing. People know what an IV is. They know, fluids. The medics will understand. The medics that are reading it will understand what's going on, but I don't need to explain the differential diagnosis to everybody.
Right.
I'm not smart enough. I'd have to read it 3 times anyway.
Yeah. It's police procedural. People say it's like a police procedural, but with paramedics. And I think that's an accurate representation inside a fantasy world. And interestingly enough, there is a Station U police unit that they encounter from time to time when they run into trouble. And I've always said, if I found the right police officer that wanted to write an urban fantasy, I've got a world for them. They just need to just pick it up. I mean,
right.
It's there, and there's detectives, there's police officers, there's all kinds of stuff they could have fun with. So
the Scott, you're on deck.
Yeah, there we go. I can surely. Only got 3 projects going right now.
I hear you.
I'll be all over it.
Spare time.
Yeah, in my spare time. I do have a question talking about the story building there. Is so in your paramedic squads, are they all just like normal humans, or are they also, because you have the zombie chef back at the station, but do you have members of the team that have different things, or is it
so?
Just...
Yeah, there's all the paramedics in the beginning are human, and it's kind of a thing. In the story, there's a thematic element that runs through the story that just comes from my background as a paramedic and a nurse, and that's that everybody should have access to healthcare. And so in this world, the unusuals, the supernaturals don't trust human healthcare, because what happens if they get figured out or
Right.
discovered. So this is their access to healthcare, and so that's kind of a background theme in the midst of all the action and everything else. So I try to capture that element of people caring for anyone, no matter who they are. But eventually, in fact, in Paramedics Amazon, Dean gets a probie to train, and she's a were-jaguar. So she's
were-jaguar.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Josh is
fun.
intrigued.
yeah. So she actually saves she saves her boss's butt because somebody like starts to go rogue on him, and she quickly changes and slams the guy down. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in a lot of hidden world, urban fantasy type stuff, there is like some sort of organizing body that keeps the curtain between the real world and the supernatural. Not I say real, but you know what I mean. The mundane world and the supernatural world.
The muggles,
Kind of
keeps the
separate.
muggles
Somebody that keeps the secrets and makes sure that there's no crossover. Do you have something like that in your setting?
It's not quite as organized as that, but there is like an organized sub-governmental structure that like rules over the supernaturals in the city. And so the premise is that the mayor's in on it, but not anybody else. So the mayor, it's that kind of like intergovernmental relationship, but only at the upper levels. So, the director of the emergency department is in on it, and a few of the nurses are in on it, but
so like a supernatural deep state kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they
Okay,
probably
that's
get some
cool.
crazy looks when they make certain policy decisions. Be like, that makes no sense. Why would you do that? It's like you think there's going to be a werewolf.
Yeah, well, there was a whole like zombie outbreak that hit in one of the books, like book 7, I think, book 6 or 7, and the outbreak got explained away as a virus, and that people were comatose or near comatose and wandered the streets, and they healed them, and it all got better. So
They all went away to some rehab place. Don't worry
right,
about
yeah, they weren't really zombies, we promise.
Yeah. It was a gas pocket that
And
exploded.
there's a great scene in that one where like the grandma's like trying to eat everybody's brains at her own viewing and funeral, right? And she's like come out of the casket and chasing the family around. And
It'll be okay. We're in denial.
It's a miracle.
Grandma zombie again.
that was a lot of fun to write that scene because it's like people are like screaming running from the funeral home as the paramedics pull up and they have to tackle grandma, and she doesn't have her dentures in, so she's not any danger to anybody, but nobody knows that. So.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
I would
That's
not
pretty
have
awesome.
I would not have thought of that angle with a grandma zombie. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So you have
just gumming everybody.
where jaguars and zombies. Do you try to expand the world with every book with different
Yeah, I really do.
fantasy creatures?
And I try to mix it up with different creatures. So I've brought in like Asian spirits, and delved into some of the African mythology with Amazon because of the character, the name character of the book. In some people from the Indian subcontinent, different mythologies. So I always am searching mythologies for ways I can bring their characters. I mean, every mythology out there has some kind of shifter creature. Every mythology out there has some kind of evil demonic force, or some kind of life-sucking creature, whether it's a vampire or something like that. So it's very easy to bring them into the story and adapt them to the mythology of my world with existing, they're just variants of an existing subculture.
Silent Wolf says Grammy's back and she's hungry.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. Let's really quick touch on the show sponsor for today's episode, which is Orphan Wars by Scott Mead and Jeff Chaney. Scott, I'll let you read it if you want to. Otherwise, I have it pulled up.
I can try it. Hold on a second. Let me have a little sneak peek. Hold on.
I love that cover, by the way.
It's pretty good.
I think all of your Reaper covers, this cover, your your Alien Invasion covers, all been fantastic.
Yeah, I really like them. The rest of this series, the covers I think are even better than this one, which is kind of amazing. So he does a great job contracting those. Orphan Wars. What would you do if you woke up in another world? When lead archaeologist Dr. Hank Murphy discovers an alien artifact on the moon, corporate interests are quick to get involved. A discovery like this could change everything, but more importantly, someone can make a fortune. But Murphy just wants to understand what this thing is and how it works. After months of research, he finally manages to locate a power source. The gate is soon activated, and Murphy is pulled through. Moments later, he finds himself in a war-torn corner of the galaxy where strangers like him are called orphans, and they are considered extremely dangerous. Somehow, altered by the experience, the archaeologist now has enhanced strength, speed, and agility. He's more than human. He's an orphan, and he must survive a deadly new reality unlike anything he can imagine. Worse still, Murphy is not the only so-called orphan in this region of the galaxy. There are many others, and not all of them are created equal. Experience this exciting new series from Scott Moon and USA Today bestseller Chaney. If you're a fan of Farscape, Renegade Star, or Battlestar Galactica, you'll love this sci-fi epic thrill ride.
Of Doom.
There you go. I didn't write the blurb, so I was nervous about reading it because I wrote it and sent it, and then they changed it a lot. So,
the first book, it's only 99 cents today, or if you have Kindle Unlimited. Is it going to be 99 cents for a while?
Probably just a few days. With all my stuff with Variant Publishing, they don't stay 99 cents for very long. So if you want it, now's the time, unless you have KU.
The link is in the live chat. It'll be in the show notes as well. Show notes done by the amazing Ken Britz, who every week compiles great show notes and also timestamps everything. So if you go back and want to watch the video later, he has all the different. Oh yes, Thrill Ride of Valor. I like that.
Thrill Ride of Valor. The other super neat thing about this is that Luke Daniels is going to narrate it, so I'm pretty happy.
Oh, nice.
So Podium hooked us up with that.
Luke always does a really good job narrating.
I'm always nervous, though. You get that email from Podium. Do you have anything you want to tell Luke before he starts? I'm like, no, sir.
I always try to do the pronunciation thing, and I always miss one. I'm like, I should have included that because that's not exactly what I had in mind, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't normally have terrible luck. The last one I had, my last book, they said Selena instead of Salina, which is probably fine. But to me, being in Kansas, it hurts me to hear it, but it's fine.
Because it's Saline County, but it's Salina, the city.
Right. And so the only one I did, and this is not in this series, it's in a different book, but I sent them a pronunciation, because at first I did a video like the first book, but by the fourth book I just said Lyman is pronounced Lyman, not Lemon, because Lyman, Colorado, because my when I listen to the proofreading back through my phone, it reads like a robot and it reads Lemon. I'm like, that's not the same thing. And nobody cares but me anyway. So good times.
So we talked about the Extreme Medical series, and you're writing book 9 right now. But you've also got several other series, and you say you were going to touch back on Accidental Traveler here after book 9. What do you have planned for that? And that's not the series that you co-write with your son.
Yeah, that's the series I co-write with my son. And we wrote the first 6 books. Then he got married, and now he has a kid. He's now 15 months old, and so we took a bit of a hiatus because he was just working and too busy to really help co-write it. And I didn't want to do it on my own because it was really something we'd shared together. But he came to me and was like, I want to, let's dig in again. So we're picking up where we left off with the original trilogy is about Hal Dix is the name of the main character. He then sends his 16-year-old daughter, accidentally travels to the fantasy world of the gaming universe, and she discovers what's going on and advances her character. It's a lit RPG, so she's playing her way through the game to get back home. And then she returns and accidentally brings a friend from college with her. And so he's like trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and he didn't want to be there. And so there's a whole like character conflict going on between the two of them, as well as traveling through the world to find their way back. And so that's what we're going to be doing with the next 3 books.
And how does it normally work with the way that you guys create the books? Is he doing the writing, and are you sharing the planning, or
we work together on the planning and outline?
Yep.
So pretty much the same process that I use, but we do it together. So we pass it back and forth. We live close enough together that we can, we actually talk to each other quite frequently. So we've got I'm ready to start working on the first book in the trilogy now. I'll write the first draft, do a quick second pass cleanup, and then hand it over to him. And his job is to add in the important gaming elements. So I try to write him in as I go. And I'm a gamer, but he's like a serious gamer. He's got his own YouTube channel and stuff. I mean, he plays all kinds of games on Twitch and stuff. And I can't even keep up with all the stuff he's doing. But so he adds in some serious gamer cred to it. As he goes through, checks my math on the leveling up and stuff like that, and then sends it back to me, adding in some elements along the way. And then I clean it up further, send it off to their editor, and that's kind of how the process goes for us.
You'll have to send us those links after the show. We can include them in the show notes so people can check those channels out, the Twitch.
Oh, yeah, I'll find them for you. Yeah, definitely.
Just Silent Wolf when we talk about limon. When life gives you limon, you make lemonade.
It's true. I think mostly in France, though.
Mostly in France. Well, you mentioned dictation earlier, and it's interesting because Chuck held up his little
stole my question,
his thing, and I've got. See, I'm on you. Like,
yeah, my wife saw yours on the replay, and she's got me one for Christmas.
I haven't used mine yet.
Haven't actually used it yet.
I just used my phone.
Yeah, I use lots of things, but I'd be curious to see how kind of your process. You have any tips for?
Yeah, what's it look like
the
for
rest
you?
of this?
I use a program on my iPhone called Just Press Record, and it actually uses the Siri engine to transcribe what I write or what I dictate. And I think it, based on, what I do and the fact that I'm doing fantasy, so there's a lot of names and things, I figure it gets about 95% of it right, aside from the obvious things it's going to mess up, like strange names and places and things like that.
It's really funny because Josh introduced me to that program when we were watching Endgame.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We were sitting there waiting, and we were talking about it. He goes, yeah, try this one. And it's like a $4 app or something like that.
Yeah.
It works really good. And then you basically export it into whatever.
I just email it to myself, and then I drop it into Scrivener. And then I find when I dictate, it's very, I don't want to say very sparse, but it's what would ordinarily be a 2,500 word chapter will come in about 1,800 words. And then when I go back and do the second pass, I flesh it out. So there's something about my dictation process that I tell the story differently, I guess. So
you're talking like scene setting or description?
Yeah. I tend to, like dialogue. I'm spot on in dictation, and I really flow very quickly when I'm doing dialogue stuff. But when I'm doing descriptive things, I find I'm much better at it when I'm typing. So I just. Now that once I learned that about myself, I don't worry about it. I just keep going, and then I add it when I go back and do the second pass, and it goes very quickly. So I add about maybe 15 to 20% on to whatever I've dictated per chapter.
It's interesting because that's true with any writing, is that ability to press forward and then clean stuff up later. And when you're I like to do a lot of dictation on a screen where I can see the words coming up, but also I know that doing it into a recording device, you have to be very disciplined because you can't look back. You got to go forward.
Yep. And and I just press forward. I think the hardest thing about dictation for me was I had to give myself permission to pause. And once you do that, and once you learn that it's okay to talk like James T. Kirk, then you can dictate just fine.
Josh talked about that, about being able to pause it and it not counted in the transcription.
Yeah, because I used to use Just Press Record, and then the reason I bought this Olympus recorder, and I've got a microphone too that it's
like a sound canceling mic.
Sound canceling mic, but it's also a powered mic, and I can clip it onto my shirt.
Okay.
And it's got like a 6-8 foot cord or whatever, and I could just put the recorder wherever I want. But the reason I got this is I was last summer, well, it'll happen a lot this summer too. I was doing basically hour-and-a-half long drives to the lake, and I was the only one in my truck pulling my boat, and so I would do a lot of dictation in the truck, and I was using Just Press Record, and I recorded probably 55 minutes, and then when I went to transcribe it, there was nothing but background noise.
Oh, wow.
And so something happened in the recording, and so I just, I didn't want that to happen again, so I got this, and it worked. And that's one of the things that I like too about just recording and not doing dictation is you can say what you want to say, but then if you have to think about something, you can just let the recording go and think about it. And then when you transcribe it, all that space, you don't have to wait for it. It's just there in one big document.
Yeah.
So in that case, you're not actually pausing it; you're just letting it run.
Yeah, you just let it run.
Yeah, I just let it run, and then I probably do spates of about 20 to 25 minutes at a time, and then stop it, and then start from where I left off. Usually, because you need to take a break or drink something or whatever, and so my files end up being about just under a chapter length. Because I come in. If I'm recording in 20 minutes, I usually have about 1,500 words. So at the end of it, when I do the dictation, I don't typically do like the punctuation too. I know Scott, when he transcribes, he does the punctuation, open quote, say your thing.
I have to do it for work, so
right.
Yeah.
I do a lot of broad stroke narration, and the Silent Wolf in the chat says, so my normal drafting is low on words. I think if I dictate, I will save so much time in the first draft, and then quadrupled in revision. And I do that too. Like if I transcribe, I'll record the broad strokes and then go back and edit, put in the punctuation, and then add in, like you're saying, the description of things, because dialogue works a lot better when you're talking.
And I have a question for you, because every now and then I get into like a flow state, and and what'll happen is I'm good at putting in the punctuation most of the time, but every now and then, about once every session, I'll hit this spot where there's just this giant paragraph, and there's no punctuation in there, or very little punctuation in there, and I realized I was in the middle of an action scene, or in the middle of something that I just kept going, and
that's cool.
Realized that I'd forgotten to punctuate most of it, but it also means I got a lot more words in faster. So it's a trade-off, and it's something that's not too hard to fix. But I see it happening, during the sessions about once each time, where I just get into that flow state, and the story just starts coming out of me. So
I get it. I do so much dictation sometimes that it's embarrassing, because I'll be on the phone talking to somebody. I'll be like, yeah, I need to set up a doctor's appointment today, period, paragraph. And they're like, what? I've literally done that. It's so embarrassing. It's horribly embarrassing. I have to immediately, it sounds really rude when you say it like that. Open quote. What? Open quote. What?
My wife, she hasn't done it in a while, but a lot of times, sometimes she would just sit up in bed in the middle of the night and start giving dictation. She'd just be like, Patient Smith presented with blah, 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 blah.
Nice.
It's like, all right, go back to sleep. I don't want to hear it.
Patient Smith died, honey. You can go back to bed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's done.
Scott McGlasson in the chat says, how would you dictate this space left intentionally blank and then have that page blank so you're not a liar? I don't know about that. I don't know.
I use lots of open brackets and closed brackets, because my dictation, all the ones I've used, will recognize them easily. Like you use parentheses. If you use a parenthesis, you have to say parent, like open parent, closed parent. But if you say parenthesis, it'll put the word C in there, and it's all jacked up. But I'll use brackets because they pop out in editing really easy. So if there's I have a character named Zetus, and on my Dragon dictation for my computer, it gets his name right. But on my Dragon anywhere or any other dictation, it gets it wrong. It'll say Zed is. And so I put open bracket Z, close bracket, and I move on. Or I'll say open bracket Z, close bracket, and then I know it's easy to fix.
Right.
So it's a handy tool for dictation, and you can just keep on trucking. But then you're talking to the grocer, and you say open bracket, close bracket, and they're confused, and they call the police.
What are you talking about? Barta today, Luke Bartlett asked, "What microphone is it?" I'll look it up and give you the link here in a second.
It's like $14, I think.
Yeah,
You sent me.
it's interesting when you talk about getting into the flow state, because I've done that too, and you get those really long paragraphs. And part of my problem with dictation is a lot of the time while transcribing is I get tired of saying those punctuations, so I'll just say everything. But what I've started doing is doing like the big broad stroke rough drafts where I'm like telling myself the story, and then the way I outline is I do scenes and then do a sub outline under that scene, and then I'll do the same thing that Scott does with brackets. And if I have something in that scene that is important to something or I need to change it, I'll just do bracket. This is because of this, close bracket. But a lot of times,
big fight is scene at the end. Close bracket.
Exactly. But a lot of times that's tough to do when you're narrating, to do that. So usually what I'll do is if I have a scene that I'm working on and I want to include another idea in that scene, I'll say like new line. And then when I go to the next scene, I'll say new paragraph, and new paragraph splits it, and new line just gives me the new line in the same paragraph.
New paragraph gives you a gap.
Yeah. And that helps me out a lot. When you go back and flush it out, that description that you put in, because I do the same thing. Like me writing through my fingers is way different than writing through my voice. And so I know that you add words, but how long typically for you on a typical day? You say you get up and you transcribe. What is that length of time where you transcribe and you bring it over and then you type? What's that day look for you? I
usually use dictation for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half tops. And that's usually four to five sessions of 15 to 20 minutes. And then I break that out, and email it to myself, drop it into Scrivener, and then usually I take a break at that point, step away from the story for an hour or so, and then come back. And then it usually takes me about 2 hours to go through and clean up and add in what needs to be added, and end up somewhere in the neighborhood of a chapter and a half, 2 chapters, somewhere like that. So about 4,000 words total.
I was going to ask, do you have like a daily word count that you're trying to hit?
I try to hit 3 every day at least. And most of the time I get over that by a good chunk, but that's what I try to shoot for. And that's through the second pass. So through that, edit pass. So it's about 3 hours of time or so that I try to dedicate just to writing every day. And that doesn't count, and then you got all the admin stuff that just has to get done.
The writing time that's actually a big block of time, because the admin stuff takes so much time. But I read a series of books. One of them I think was called was it Deep Work? Was one of the books. Some of those they talk about that really most people have 4 hours of quality work in them, and after that you're burning too much glycogen out of your brain, or whatever the scientific term is. And your diminishing returns reduce rapidly. So I used to always have these goals to go that. But now if I can get 4 solid hours, even if they're not in a row, a day, I feel like a champ. Things start to happen.
I think that's about right. Your creative brain burns a lot of fuel. If you're just answering emails and just, doing random stuff, you don't burn as much energy. But when you're actively creating, and there's lots of studies that show this, brain scans and things that can show how the brain lights up when you're being creative, when you're telling a story, when you're making something up along the way. And you burn a lot more glucose in your system when you do that, your blood sugar. And that's the fuel that powers your brain. And so, you do run out of energy over time, especially if you do it in a straight shot. So.
I haven't read that book, but I just looked it up on Amazon. I put it on my list.
It's really good. You should put it at the top of your audiobook list.
The audiobook's good. Yeah, the audiobook's decent on that.
That is live chat as well.
It is deep work, and there's another one. There's another one that's.
It's on Audible Premium Plus too. Nice.
Yeah, but it is literally a life-changing book for creative people and content creators, because it will change your life if you really I've listened to it like 4 times. Fine.
Gonna make me do it.
There's a couple others I read about the same time as that are really good too. I need to look those up because they were very good. But that one's don't always rise to the top. The key message is you put what's most important first,
Right.
and you don't do anything else while you're doing it, because you will create a better product faster. All the things. So
yeah, like when I'm dictating and I've got my phone up, right next to me, and I'm just thinking, I'm walking around sometimes. I shut off notifications. I do all that stuff because I just can't. I don't want to have anything take me out of the story mode while I'm doing that. So, I learned a lot of that from deep work. That and it is all about that flow state. It's all about that just getting into the point where your brain is just dumping the work onto the page without you even having to hardly think about it.
Yeah.
So
if you can get a couple of quality hours in, they're better. Like I'm notorious for like really scrounging for writing time. So I'll get like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and in almost every conceivable configuration. And by the end of the day, I might have 2 or 3 hours. But if I'd sat down for one solid hour, I would have probably done twice as much and been happier. But that's what I have available. So that's what I use. But preferred, I always like to get it done before everybody wakes up and before people start demanding things, before I start getting distracted.
Lou Holston in the chat says, so good they can't ignore you. And Digital Minimalism is a good book by Cal Newport as well.
Cal Newport has several books on those types of productivity things. I think that are good.
That's the one thing I'm kind of struggling with, or I had been last year, and I'm trying to get on top of this year. So I'm definitely going to bump that book up to the front of my list, because, I mean, like you say, like if I don't get up and do the work right at the beginning of the day, that sometimes it just doesn't get done.
It's amazing how porous our buckets are that we put our lives in, because people are like, well, how do you work full time and write all these books? I'm like, well, I do 4 things. I work, I do family, I work out, and I write books, and that's it.
Right.
And people are like, they were at work, they were talking about, what was the movie? The Rancher in Wyoming. So I'm talking about, it has Kevin Costner in it.
Yeah.
Yellowstone. It was on, and everybody's like talking about how great it was. I'm like, I really wanted to see that. And they're like, it's been on for like 4 years. I'm like, yeah, I don't hardly watch TV at all, because I would love to, but I'm very focused. Right. So
yeah, another good book that I really liked that helped me change how I worked was one called When by Daniel Pink. And it's really about learning whether you're a morning or a nighttime person or a midday person, and how to push through different time periods when you're working, what kind of work to do different times of the day, depending on the type of person you are. And that really helped me kind of identify when to focus on writing, when to focus on the just routine work that I have to get done, that kind of stuff.
That sounds like there's a book called 2K to 10K that's been around for a while, but it's a writing book, and it talks about finding your ideal writing time.
I read that book a long time ago. Rachel Aaron wrote that book, and it was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd seen that sprint method.
Yep. And then Chris Fox popularized it shortly after that came out.
I put all the links. I'm trying to catch the link.
Come on, Josh.
It's like the most linktacular one. Yeah.
Bam.
The most linked in any
If you
Keystroke.
never watch Keystroke, watch this one, and you'll get all the books you need.
All the links.
This one's going to change your life.
So I'd like to ask, you've been writing books for a while. You've got a few series under your belt. What's the greatest bit of advice that you could give to somebody starting out or trying to like kickstart their writing career or getting into it? What do you think is the best thing that you could tell that new author?
And the best, there's 2 pieces of advice I always give. Start your newsletter now, and always be writing the next book. Because the adage that nothing sells your previous book like your next book is the most true thing I've ever heard in the world.
It's the one thing we can actually prove works. You can come out, you can come and be like I'm an Amazon ads expert, and you can kind of maybe convince me that you know what you're doing selling stuff, but what you're just saying is absolutely provable and real. Yep, for sure.
Well, it's interesting because that's 2 weeks in a row now that people have said newsletters is one of the number one things that you need for your author career. Michael Rothman said it last week, and then you're saying it again today. And I'm just starting to get back into it. I did my first newsletter of this year back in January, and prior to that, I hadn't sent one out since 2018.
I've never sent one out. I even had some for a while. I even had a mailing list. I don't know what to talk about. I mean, I'm not that interesting.
I know.
You are,
I've never heard an author or any kind of entrepreneur say to me that they were sorry they started collecting emails early. You know, and so, especially as we look at the changes that Facebook is potentially doing to how they're doing different things, you know, the changes that Apple is engaging in to ensure privacy. The only thing you control is the emails you have, because those are the things those are your direct connections to readers. And there's
keep your fans happy.
Yeah.
Chuck?
William Tyler Davis says, my newsletter is dreadful. and Bart says, I have 35 people on my list. Hey,
I have one good idea, recipes, and I only do it like every 2 months. So yeah, I get it.
But Papa Chuck could just get on there and say, I'm Papa Chuck, and this is an interesting shit I have to say today. And people would probably eat that stuff up.
Papa Chuck is the most interesting, uninteresting person in the world.
Oh, thank you, Corey.
Silent Wolf had a question about your writing process, Jamie. Says, do you draft the next book while revising the current one?
I do that. Yeah. When I'm doing like a third pass. So when I'm actually getting it ready for the editor, then yes, what I do is I edit in the morning because that's creative time. And then I usually will spend about a week before I'm ready to start it. While it's getting ready to go to the editor, I will start drafting or start working on the outline for the next book. I won't actually draft the book. I tried doing that once, and you know what happened? I was writing two books from different genres. I was writing a dystopian sci-fi and an urban fantasy at the same time. And I ended up with an urban fantasy character who was whiny and didn't know what to do with her life. And that is just not how that works. I mean, it's great for dystopian.
So Twilight, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't, it was wrong. And I ended up having to rewrite the entire book from scratch because I'd ended up with an urban fantasy with a dystopian sci-fi character. And, there are tropes, and there's a reason for those things because that's what people are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
William Tyler Davis asked, where is the Keystroke Coffee newsletter?
That's not what he said.
He's a writer's blog fan. Yes, it is, Chuck.
The podcast, the audio version, being much more G-rated than what I'm looking at on the screen right now.
Speaking of which, writer's block coffee is what he's talking about here. You know what would be good is to start a Keystroke Coffee newsletter and then give away Keystroke Coffee. That would be an idea.
We could tell our favorite coffee stories.
That's right.
I bet you there are some.
I woke up one morning and brewed coffee, and when I went to drink it, it was hot water because I forgot to put the.
My favorite coffee story actually involves Josh, because when we went to 20 Books for Vegas, and I got up super early to write, he was still sleeping, and so I made coffee in the dark in those little pre-made coffee things. And I made the first cup, and I look over, and he's still sleeping. I'm like, well, he's not going to drink the second one, so I'm going to make it myself. So I started it, and I kept writing. I was writing like on my tablet. I look over there, I'm looking at my cup. I'm looking at the coffee machine. Like, there ain't no cup in that coffee machine. And so it filled the tray. And this is in Vegas, mind you. So I just take the tray, and I just dumped it into my cup. I'm like, what could possibly be on this tray that would be bad? I mean, surely I'll be okay.
Right. It's a hotel room, right?
Yeah,
I drank the coffee.
Clean those. They have maids.
Yeah. Nobody gets up to things in Vegas hotel rooms.
Yeah, I'm sure they clean that regularly.
Yeah.
Listen, the amount of things that I've seen Scott do that are just like,
Yeah.
That's
usually
really,
involving food.
That's why he has the immune system of
Thank
a minotaur.
God for the human immune system.
Yeah. Silent Wolf says, "Where is my keystroke tea? I have not developed a keystroke tea yet.
I'm actually having tea today instead of coffee.
Oh, look
Very
at you with your hat and your.
I'm having a little Earl Grey vanilla.
Put your pinky up when you're drinking that tea. There you go. Good times. Well, let's see. The Paramedics Amazon. That's your most recent book. I'm going to put the link in the live chat. If you have not picked it up, go and do it right now. And then the ninth book. When is that? When do you think that's going to be out?
That should be out. I'm aiming for. I'm really close to being done, so I think it'll probably be out sometime around the end of April, maybe.
What's your release schedule? I mean, you're not every 30 days.
No. I put out I aim to put out I think 8 books this year. So about roughly every month and a half to 2 months. The beginning of the year always starts slow for me because I take a gamecation in December or January, depending on how it falls, where I actually, because I'm like you, Scott, I don't play video games. I'd love to play video games, but I don't have time to play video games. It's not a high priority. So I take a gamecation every year for 2 weeks and I play the hell out of a game, at least one game, sometimes 2, depending on how deep the stories are. This year it was Assassin's Creed, the most recent Assassin's Creed.
Was it the Viking one?
Viking one, Valhalla. Yeah.
Valhalla,
and that was just epic. Oh my gosh. I was killing everybody. It was great.
I need to do that. I'm going to schedule a
Very
gamecation.
cathartic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lou says he forgot to switch from pot to cup mode, and coffee covered the entire counter with a nice waterfall to the lake below.
You know,
No
it's
bueno.
your spouse is especially appreciate that sort of thing. I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you from experience.
Well, speaking of coffee, if you have not got your Keystroke Coffee at keystrokemedium.com/coffee, Writer's Block by far has been the #1 seller. And you can get it now in whole bean, Walt Robillard.
I might have ordered 2 bags of that the other day.
I might have just fulfilled your order this morning.
Thank you, sir.
It should be on its way.
That's
here
quality
shortly.
service.
Quality service. Jamie, thank you so much for coming back on the show, man. It was always a blast to have you on.
Anytime you got a late cancellation, give me a call. I'm a podcaster. I can jump in and talk about anything quickly. So, and just thanks for having me on. It's always great talking about books and writing and the craft and talking with you guys in general. So thanks.
Well, I can't wait till November this year. We can hang out and have
Definitely.
some coffee in person. Everybody else in the live chat, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us today. Rick, Lou, Bard of today, Silent Wolf. I saw Kayleen and William in there earlier. By the way, William Tyler Davis has some of the most hilarious TikToks on Writer TikTok. If you have TikTok and you're not following him, check him out because it's hilarious, some of the stuff he puts up there. And you wouldn't think that authors would have a lot of material to use on TikTok, but there is a lot, and he's pretty funny on there. If you're listening on the audio feed and you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hey, Unity 151 BookTube is on. Hello. Smash the like button. That's right. If you're watching, smash the like button and subscribe. We will be back. Who's on the show next week? Let's see. If you missed Friday's show with Kayleen and Lauren, they had the one of the writers of American Sniper on their show, and that was a phenomenal interview with the Google Calendar. Walt had Ben Stevens on his show last week. I don't know who he has on tomorrow. Next week Amy Duboff is coming on.
Amy.
And it looks like maybe Eric Flint might be on the Writer's Journey on Friday.
Tony
Weisskopf is going to come on the show.
Did we get Weisskopf?
That's what I heard.
March 8th, I think. I had to verify that, but Tony Weisskopf might be coming on the show then. So got a couple of weeks of really good interview guests coming on. So.
As opposed to this one, which is fun.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we've got to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
You're a filler. We just got to pack you in there.
What do we have this week? I'll just bring on Jamie, whatever.
Bring him on. It's a headlining act.
I'm happy to take second, third, or fifth fiddle to Eric Flint and the like. So definitely.
Yeah,
good times.
Amazing stuff.
All right, everybody. Well, we're going to take off for that. Come back next week. We're going to talk about some reading, going to talk about some writing, and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. See ya.
Later, folks.
Laters.